Yo, it's a new week, which means only one thing. Well, it means a lot of things, but it means this. It's a brand new edition of the Stokastic Hall of Fame, where we induct all of our closest friends rocking the Stokastic avatar into the Hall of Fame, and in the process, give out some free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum subscriptions. All you got to do to get in on this is go to stokastic.com/avatar, download the avatar, use it wherever it is. DraftKings, FanDuel, Yahoo, doesn't matter. Tweet your wins when you finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more to @Stokastic HOF. It's Stokastic Hall of Fame, and get yourself a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum. Get yourself up here on the board, and we'll do the bragging for you. Let's get into it. First up, Alex Baker. Oh, our boy Awesemo himself. This is why it's important to have projections to go to the second decimal point, taking down 75K. And that was only a couple days after he tweeted, "The haters will say you only won because you entered 3 lineups." Another 20K victory there for Alex. Then you got Kenny Herron. Got bumped out at first with a Paul George game-winning shot in the last game of the night. But hey, back at it again today. 3rd place in the mini-max. Solid showing for you, Kenny. And then you got Joe. How about Joe? A trifecta of top 3 NBA DFS finishes across these different sites. People bash these small slates, but I've been having a ton of luck. Shout out to Stokastic.com. $1,000, $500, another $400 win there. And then you got Jacob. You guys put me on fields today thanks to Eric Lindquist. My best day of the year, thanks to the whole Stokastic team for the help and free content you guys put out. Yeah, massive day. What's that, $56,000, 3 different contests? Huge day, Jacob. Congrats. And then, biggest DFS night ever. Nearly took down the 4-point play. Thanks to the crew for the help. Easily the best site out there. Yes, agreed. Omar with the $4,000 win. And that follows it up with Jordan. Awesome stuff. Tools pointed me right to Goddard Captain. Keep this hot streak going. A $700 victory there. And Byron Paulson. Thanks for the awesome content. Hopefully I'll get to the top spot soon. What else? Tanner's Clutch. Best tools in the DFS world. 2nd in the nickel on FanDuel, or the piggy bank shot. Yeah, 5 cents into 150. Looks pretty nice, fella. And then we've got, how about Underdog 89? 1st place, 2,000 with the Miami stack. Chalky lineup, but hey, got it done. And that's all that matters. And then been a good week in the mini max and the $1.20 max on DraftKings. Shout out to the best tools in the game. 1,500 and 375. And we close this one out with Johnston. Fun night. Appreciate everything you guys do. 2nd place in the windmill. Remember, download the avatar at stokastic.com/avatar. Finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, and tweet your wins at Stokastic HOF on Twitter. Get your free month. You've all been inducted into the Hall of Fame. And for those of you who've been there before, welcome back.
People are calling your name. They're literally
Nice. I'm got chat open somewhere. Oh, nice. Obi-Wan. I watched that show.
What show is that?
That's funny. That's a good joke.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Stokastic DFS live before lock Monday Night Football. Hey, it was a pretty good Sunday slate. Sunday Night Football. Patrick Mahomes may have thrown a few times in that game, but now we've got the Ravens, we've got the Saints. 2 is the line most places. Total's down to 46. And here to break it all down from a DFS perspective, it's the Showdown Shaman himself. There were people in chat calling his name already right before we were getting in here. Neil Orfield, follow him at PlayerQDFS. Neil, what's going on, man? How are you this Monday?
I'm good. I'm excited about this slate. We got some late inactives, I think more or less exactly what we expected. So happy that we got what we expected. Makes it a little bit of an easier slate. Should be a fun one. The backup tight end Isaiah likely coming into play. Glad I got some shares of him in best ball. Sort of hope he works out, but really I just hope whatever I need tonight ends up working out in my best lineups. Yeah, it's an exciting slate.
Yeah, there was some sort of bit I was trying to do at the very beginning, some sort of horrible play on words, like there are some Ravens we're likely to talk about. But of course, we had to mention him right off the top because the injuries for Baltimore in the receiving game obviously changing the way we're going to look at this one. And by the way, if you want to follow me, my name's Matt Savoca at Draftaholic as well. Always appreciated. We're brought to you by No House Advantage. And we got to dig right into this one. 46-point total. As you mentioned, a lot of these inactives, actives, we got the news earlier in the week. Bateman's out for the year. We knew Andrews wasn't going to play. We pretty much knew Jarvis Landry wasn't likely to play here. Anything in the actives or inactives category that really struck your eye, that you got to change your lineups as we dig into this final hour before lock?
I mean, I didn't have any Deshaun Jackson prior to Deshaun Jackson being called up earlier. I think that he's in play. I mean, he's obviously the most boom bust player maybe in the NFL right now. Like he's either going to have a long touchdown or he's going to do nothing generally, but I'm going to get to some Deshaun Jackson. Obviously we see changes in projection for Marquez Callaway, Traquan Smith get little bumps in their projection. Rashid Shaheed too. He's the most expensive of those three somehow and the worst projected, but nobody's going to play him. Yeah, as far as changes go, I think it kind of came down exactly what we expected. Kevin White, I guess, is now in play. I'll have a few shares of Kevin White in that kind of messy. Yeah, I guess we got 4 after Chris Olave, guys that we need to consider for the Saints. It's a little bit of a mess at wide receiver for both of these teams.
Don't you love that though, Neil? Like knowing you, that means there's lots of fodder at the bottom of the salary pool where we can make some weird choices if we're trying to take down the biggest prizes tonight. Yeah.
I do and I don't. I kind of prefer it with I don't know if you were on the show with me the night that I called Paris Campbell, where I was like, I'm going to be jamming in Paris Campbell. I played 30-something%, I think, of Paris Campbell. He was under 4% owned. I felt so good about that because I was like, he plays every step. He runs every route. He is the guy. And he didn't do shit in that game, to be clear. But I was more confident in that call than this. I feel like it's too much of a mess. Like there are too many options that I feel like I need to be a little bit, I need to play some Deshaun Jackson. I need to play some Kevin White. I need to be, spreading out. So I actually prefer the slates where I can kind of like hone in on, I really like this guy. I don't know that I feel that way on this one, but maybe as we talk about it, I'll find.
Wait, you're butting up one of the great myths of MME DFS, where if you have 150 lineups, can't you just play every combination? Isn't that how it works?
Pretty much.
Just play 150 and you just win every time.
Yeah, you're right. I should just play 100.
Come on,
play the full 150, spread it out. Yeah, I'll play everybody.
Get good.
No. Unfortunately, there are so many combos in DFS, even in Showdown. I've played slates where like FanDuel had 3 different contests that were 150 maxes and all had like prize pools of 30,000 or more, and just gone bust in all of them. Like playing 450 different lineups, different caps on my salary and stuff, and I still go bust on all of them. It's a tough game.
Yeah, but it is tough, but there are very few right now playing this game better than you. Let's be you're eating some humble pie for no reason right now. We got a super chat, and I guess we got to bring up one of these low salary fodder players. Safe Din 499 super chat. Thanks a lot, man. Hi, thoughts on Andy Isabella?
So we currently do not have a projection for Andy Isabella. My assumption was that he is not playing. I'm certainly not going to have a ton. Let me just check out his status. It's a good question because he's in the player pool. We had a projection for him earlier, at least a little bit of a projection, and now we've burned it down to 0. So
I'm seeing if he played it all. Yeah, he hasn't played it all yet. So it's possible he plays.
He was on the practice squad. So was he called up from the practice squad is the question.
I see the elevations as Deshaun Jackson, Benjamin Victor. Yeah,
he wasn't called up. I mean,
there you go.
I don't think that Andy Isabella is. Yeah, I think he's not called up on the team.
Well,
if somebody knows different in chat, feel free to point that out to us. But based on what I'm seeing on Twitter, he wasn't listed among the players called up today. I guess he could have been activated earlier, maybe, but I don't think he was. So I don't believe Andy Isabella is in play tonight.
There you go. Easy as that. Let's break this down for a minute. Let's talk about the game environment, the range of outcomes before we dig into this from a player by player standpoint. This line was 2.5 on Baltimore's side heading into the weekend. It was also a total of 48.5. That's down to 46 most places. Baltimore -2. I've seen 1.5. These teams shouldn't be very evenly matched. On paper, the Ravens should dominate, but ultimately the injuries are piling up. And it's basically on Lamar Jackson's shoulders to make magic happen. The Saints, for what it's worth, are doing the rational thing offensively, which is getting the ball into Alvin Kamara's hands, dumping it off, and finding a way to get Olave involved here and there. That's really their only recipe for success. What are you seeing as the most likely game environment here today?
Ooh, man, that is not my wheelhouse, to be honest. Calling the game environment. I actually, off the top of my head, couldn't tell you where this game is being played. So, is it in? It's in New Orleans, right?
It is. It's in New Orleans.
Okay, I did know that. I actually was asked this question by a friend earlier. He was trying to do his pick'ems, asked me who I would pick. I think because it's in New Orleans, I would expect New Orleans to win this game. Maybe call it a 23-17 final. I think it's going to be a low scoring game, most likely, just because it's in New Orleans. I think, I don't know. I don't feel strongly about it. Do you have a strong take on this? I feel like you are probably better at guessing these game scripts, how they play out.
Well, as Gajeski often likes to say, there's a reason the total sits at the number it's at. It's because that is what they believe to be the most likely outcome here. So Ravens 24 implied points, Saints 22 implied points. Obviously, I think that's pretty fair. I think the way this game goes under is if Lamar Jackson and Alvin Kamara each or one of the two have a day, right? Because every time they're rushing, I realize Kamara can get it done through the air as well. That clock is moving. That clock is moving that whole time through. So I do think that there's shootout potential here in the Dome, but I also think that looking at these teams and looking at how they're banged up, they're going to try to do what they do best, which for both of them would be their best players out of the backfield. The Saints, in terms of run defense, what they're going to have to do to stop Lamar Jackson, 17th in yards per carry, pretty meh. 12th in Football Outsiders rush DVOA. The Ravens, actually, typically a great defense. They're a big run funnel this year. They're 8th in Football Outsiders pass DVOA and 23rd in rush DVOA. We know that's the weak spot that Baltimore is going to try to exploit. I do think that this is a ground and pound game for both teams, but we could see some shots. I saw a lot of love in chat for Duvernay and Deshaun Jackson. These are big play guys, but kickers and defenses are absolutely viable in the most likely game environment for me.
Yeah, absolutely they are. I'm going to be playing. I mean, Justin Tucker looks phenomenal. I did just see a stat from Cody Main that like the average kicker on Showdown slates gets like 19% ownership on average, and on Showdown slates, Justin Tucker gets 32% ownership. So people know about Justin Tucker. I'm guessing the ownership is pretty high tonight as well. But hard not to love him. He projects very well. He projects the best of the kickers and defenses in this game. So hard not to want.
He's moved beyond kicker. That's why he's
a legend,
football weapon, a legend. That's right.
That's right. Absolutely.
Speaking of legendary, super chat number 2. Thanks, Corey. No Ingram. That is the last inactive. We have to mention Mark Ingram inactive for the New Orleans Saints. What does that do for Taysom Hill? Great thinking, by the way. And what does it do in terms of what do you think about fading Alvin Kamara? Let's start there. Is fading Alvin Kamara viable on this slate?
Man, it'd be tough for me to be fading Alvin Kamara. I mean, it depends on what you mean by fade too. Like full fading Alvin Kamara across 150 lineups would be too rich for me. I don't think I'm going to be doing that. If you go under the field on Kamara, that's something so I actually have not built my lineups. I'll be building throughout the show because I was waiting on projection updates with the latest news. But my guess is that I'm not going to be too far below the field. We've got a huge projection on Alvin Kamara. You look at every player on the entire slate. Lamar Jackson, number 1, but Alvin Kamara sits at number 2, just a few points behind him, and then a couple points ahead of Andy Dalton. So I'm going to be getting plenty of Alvin Kamara. The field's getting there. It makes sense to get to some Alvin Kamara. I guess the reason you could think about fading Alvin Kamara would be Taysom Hill does steal those touchdowns from time to time, but Kamara has been very involved with Andy Dalton at quarterback in the passing game. So I just think, the upside is there, and there's a pretty built-in floor for Alvin Kamara too.
I couldn't agree more. I think that Taysom Hill does have slightly more of a ceiling chance here because Red zone opportunities really, really matter for low volume players. He could give you 4, he could give you 40, but that's the exact kind of range of outcomes we're looking for on showdown slates, and we're trying to win a tournament here. Look, if you look at our percentage chances that Kamara ends up in the optimal lineup, it's not 100, it's not 90. Honestly, it doesn't even look like a 2/3 chance, but he looks better than about everyone else. So fading him entirely is really, really risky business. But there's not an 100% chance that a player who's particularly expensive, especially on DraftKings, what is he? He's 11-4 on DraftKings. This is tough. He's still a decent value. He's just not a smash value. And I think if you are playing 5 lineups or lower volume like that, I don't think it's crazy at all to fade.
No, it's certainly, yeah, I'm with you. I mean, you can take stands like that. He's not like Patrick Mahomes would have been a tougher fade. And even those, we see quarterbacks who are in the optimal 90% of the time, they still fail 10% of the time. Certainly you could fade Alvin Kamara if you're playing 5 lineups. I just ran my first crunch and I haven't, made many adjustments yet, but just based on the first crunch, I'm getting Alvin Kamara 13% in the captain spot. And I'm also getting to him 52% in the utility spot. So currently I'm over the field on Alvin Kamara. We do have some cheaper options too that make it a little bit easier to play him. I mean, we've got Isaiah Likely obviously in the mid-range, but then all of the quarterbacks the wide receivers are relatively inexpensive. The most expensive we've got is 8,600 Chris Olave. Then it's a jump down to 6,800 Devin Duvernay. Actually, I'm not sorted by, but yes, 6,800 Devin Duvernay. Then we jump all the way down to Demarcus Robinson, 5,600. I mean, we've got plenty of value options in the $3,000 to $5,000 range, and then even some 200 guys who I'm going to be taking some shots on. So it's pretty easy to get Alvin Kamara in there. If you want to fade him, I'm with you. You could certainly fade Alvin Kamara. I'm not going to have him. I'm going to have him in over half my lineups, but I'm going to have 40% without him. So if you want to full fade him in 5, totally fine. You can make plus EV lineups without Alvin Kamara.
And I'm excited to hear who of those players you're especially into tonight. But first, I do have to ask you the last question before we dig into these player-by-player analyses. What are the chances, just off the top of your head, that this game goes 7 points over its projected total? So that would be 53 points today.
I mean, I feel it's about the same every week. I always say about 25%, maybe 20% in this game. I feel like that's a pretty high total, but honestly, these defenses are not that amazing. So I could see it happening. Lamar Jackson can score on anybody. Yeah, I'll go around 20%.
Okay, I think it might be a little higher than that. I think there's risk of ruin, especially with Marcus Lattimore out on the other side. I'm gonna go 1-4, 25%. Right. Not insanity in terms of difference, but I think there's a little upside there. Speaking of upside, guys, BetMGM. Neil? Let's say you weren't around these streets and you didn't have a Stokastic Plus Platinum membership, and someone said, "Hey, could I offer you 2 months free?" Would you want that?
Yeah, I'd sign up for that right away.
I think you'd like that. And
I'm in.
What if they said, okay, we can get you on a new betting platform that has a great interface, that we have projections that can help you over on oddshopper.com, and you can make a risk-free bet up to $1,000. So there's huge upside on top of that free Stokastic Plus membership for 2 months.
Yeah, Matt, I'm turned on right now. I want this deal.
All right. This is the kind of deal we're able to offer right now over at BetMGM. In the video description below, you will see a link to BetMGM. And listen up, guys, because there are very specific instructions that this will work. But guys, when you finish it, 2 months free of Stokastic Plus Platinum. That's everything we got, and up to a $1,000 risk-free bet available for you over at BetMGM. You got to create a free Stokastic membership using the form in the link below. Log in if you already have a Stokastic account. And then you have to click on the large BetMGM button that appears after registering or logging in. There's really important steps, guys, because we can't help you if you just get into BetMGM the normal way. Then complete the necessary steps over at BetMGM. Create the account, deposit at least $10, make your first paid bet, and then you're going to get that Stokastic subscription after it settles. It's really just an awesome time to get into the action over there. We're team 3rd platform, team 4 platforms, and we're able to give you a little love there with the 2 months free. Really awesome time. Neil, I know you'd get into the action if you haven't already, and you guys should too. All right, we're going to go into the Baltimore Ravens, our visiting team. Quarterback position, What are you doing with Lamar Jackson? He can electrify a slate, but he's actually been kind of so-so from a fantasy football perspective the last few weeks.
Yeah, I'm still playing a lot of Lamar Jackson. I just think he's got the highest floor and the highest ceiling. I mean, you're right. We have seen actually some floor games recently that were not all that pretty. He's still Lamar Jackson. He's still got clearly the best upside on the slate. I'm playing currently. I've got Lamar Jackson 20% in the captain spot, 68% in the util spot. I might come down a little bit off those numbers, but my guess is I'm going to have Lamar Jackson in at least like 80% of my lineups. He just any given slate, prime time, Lamar Jackson. I just think that he's a slam dunk play. Highest projected player on the slate by 3 fantasy points.
Yeah, by a ton. Highest median, highest ceiling, no doubt about it. Fade him if you dare. But look, this offense is basically the same version of the Ravens offense we've seen every year since that MVP season in 2019. They're 28th in pass plays per game. I guess that's technically better than 32nd, 31st, and 30th and 29th. That's great. But at least he's throwing deep. 6th in the NFL in deep ball attempts. In air yards per attempt, he's top 10 as well. And of course, because of the rushing upside, his expected fantasy points, his opportunity value is still top 6 in the NFL. Look, 21, 22 fantasy points, that'll be okay tonight. You're only feeling really good, though, if you get that 25 to 35 fantasy point performance. Or, and Neil, this is a real possibility, that just no one is scoring fantasy points other than maybe one other player, which is an actual likelihood here. It's just not the most likely thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a game that could be the case, that these teams are, having a hard time moving the ball, having a hard time scoring fantasy points, in which case I think Lamar Jackson's going to be in the optimal, and probably Alvin Kamara. Like, if the teams aren't moving the ball that well, it's just going to be the guys who are getting fantasy points here and there. And I think those guys fanny points here and there. Yeah. Alvin Kamara, he'll get his PPR points most likely. Lamar Jackson will get some points on the ground. So yeah, I think these guys have I think it's pretty obvious that they have the safest floors on this slate.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lamar, just by nature of being a quarterback, he probably has more. I hate the fact that he has games in his game log where he's got 16 attempts, but he's actually been over 30 pass attempts in 3 of his last 4 games. In yards per attempt, he's usually over 6, but that doesn't usually amount to more than, say, 230, 240 passing yards, unless, he takes the top off a defense, maybe DeSean Jackson today, but you really rely on the rushing upside as well. So it does add to the floor, but you need that ceiling today. Ultimately, it's still a situation where the chances of him being in the optimal lineup look as good as any. There really isn't much else to say other than he's a good play.
Yeah, I think that Lamar Jackson, one of the most straightforward plays on the slate. Like, we don't need to waste that much time on Lamar Jackson, Alvin Kamara. We know who they are. They're great plays. If you can fit them in your lineups, they have the floor, they have the ceiling. Yeah, nothing else we really need to say about those guys.
He is currently 3rd at the quarterback position in carries per game. Speaking of carries per game, this is where it gets complicated, right? Because I guess Kenyon Drake should be the guy. We'll have Justice Hill in there as well. Pat Ricard is playing that H-back, fullback kind of role. Talk to me about this running back position. Obviously, they may all play a second fiddle in the running game compared to Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, and I think they probably will, but they do use the running backs a bit. I think Kenyon Drake, he's in the studs tier. I wrote up the article today. I do a studs tier that is, let's see, 1, 2, 6 players. Kenyon Drake is among those players. He is among the highest projected players on the slate for us. He's 7,200. Gus Edwards is out. Obviously, J.K. Dobbins is out as well. Kenyon Drake steps into that running back 1 role for the Ravens. I think he's going to look great. I think that he projects really well. He's a guy who's going to be in a lot of my life. Probably, I think I've got like 30% right now, maybe 40% with the captain. I think that he's a very solid point per dollar play. Justice Hill has carried the ball 9 total times over the past 2 weeks, but that was with Gus Edwards active. I think that he'll probably take on a bigger role. He's 2,200, probably makes some sense. Mike Davis, I'm I feel like he's probably third in line there, and Patrick Ricard maybe even ahead of him as the fullback, but that's another story. I mean, Patrick Ricard will be in the game. I don't know how many carries Mike Davis gets. They don't really need to go to a third running back all that often because they have Lamar Jackson. So I think it's Kenyon Drake, Justice Hill, maybe Patrick Ricard, just because he will be in the game. He does get targeted. He's been targeted like 8 times or something so far this year. Could score a touchdown. He might be more involved at the goal line as the fullback without Gus Edwards, especially. So I think that probably my order in here would be Kenyon Drake, Justice Hill, Patrick Ricard, and then Mike Davis in terms of the exposure that I'm looking to get to.
Makes sense to me. There is an argument for Justice Hill being sort of an interesting, slightly contrarian play. He's not super cheap, right? 2,200 is not the floor here, but in terms of point per dollar, the value score over on Stokastic.com, it's actually not terrible. And he has actually averaged 1 red zone rush per game. You don't think of Justice Hill, more, you think of more of a scat back, but I guess they're trying to be creative with Justice Hill. So there is a little bit of upside here. We have a median projection around 5 points. Not exciting here, but again, these are the types of chances we can take towards the bottom of our showdown lineups where if you have them and you're right, your lineup could look pretty good. But that's as thin of a play I'm doing. Ricard is just the homage to the weird tight end and fullback that seems to score every single showdown slate.
Yeah, exactly right. He's a showdown play. You're not playing him on a main slate, but Ricard is a guy who could score a touchdown, a fluky touchdown, given the ball at the 1 yard line on a misdirection kind of play. I wouldn't be a shocking thing. So I'm going to have some Patrick Ricard, but certainly could very well score 0 fantasy points here.
Very possible 0. Ricard has 2 rushing attempts since week 4.
Yeah.
One thing I will say is Kenyon Drake, in limited chances to do this, has looked good when he's the guy. Week 6, especially when he got 10 carries and 2 targets, turned it into 127 total yards. Last week against Tampa Bay, who's not the same defense against the rush that they used to be, 7 carries, 4 targets, turns it into 67 total yards, adds a touchdown. I think there's some upside here. Solid median projection, decent value. I'm not playing Mike Davis at all. That pretty much sum up the Ravens running backs for you?
I think so. I think that's a good explanation of the Ravens running backs.
Not super fun, but there's some value there, as good and as much as they run the ball, even outside of Lamar Jackson. Now we'll get to the wide receivers, and we'll start it off right with the super chat from Scott. Thanks, Scott, for the super chat. What's up with the Demarcus Robinson groin injury if Ravens are activating all these practice subs? So the conspiracy bros are out, is what's going on. We're talking about they need some speed because Demarcus Robinson, who's definitely there for speed himself, may be hampered with a groin injury. I don't think this is a bad way of thinking. What say you, Neil?
Wait, so you think that Demarcus Robinson might be limited is what we're saying. That's why Deshaun Jackson was called up potentially, is because we're thinking Demarcus Robinson might be limited. That's an interesting. Yeah, it's certainly that's not just conspiracy. Conspiracy I feel like has negative connotation. That's a positive way of thinking about, you got to think about why they're doing the things they're doing. So I think that's a valid thought process. Sounds like you do too. Sounds like you do too.
Can someone get us a live feed from? We need people in the building. What do the warm-ups look like?
Yeah,
is he going full speed? We can see these things now. It's 7:40 on the East Coast. Someone get to New Orleans. Get in the chat. Let us know, because I kind of get it. I still think that Deshaun Jackson's most likely outcome here, guys, is 0 fantasy points.
I think it is too. It's the most likely. It'd be so fun if he scores a touchdown. He's a 50-yarder on the first drive, and you're over the field. He is getting 7.4% ownership. So I wish he was a little bit lower, but I think that's probably accurate. That he's going to get a little bit more ownership than Kevin White, just because he's Deshaun Jackson. People want to play him. He's still the burner there. So
well, people want to play him, and he's also an order of magnitude in salary less than other punt plays like Justice Hill, right? You got to pay $5,600 for Demarcus Robinson services today. James Prochet at $5,700. Like, these are thin plays, and in the mid 4 figures, it doesn't feel great to go there. How are you breaking down this wide receiver core? No Tylan Wallace tonight too.
For Baltimore, I mean, I think that Devin Duvernay is pretty clearly the wide receiver 1, followed by James Prochet. After those two, Demarcus Robinson is playing, so he is certainly an interesting play as well. Demarcus Robinson, the last game they played, Lamar was throwing Demarcus Robinson the ball over and over. So kind of a little wrinkle there. Like he seemed to be getting more involved. So maybe I'm wrong to say Devin Duvernay is the clear wide receiver one. Maybe Demarcus Robinson is kind of stepping in as a guy who's in play. But I think those three are the most interesting. It's Devin Duvernay, Demarcus Robinson, and James Prochet. Deshaun Jackson, maybe he'll have a couple long shots, and if he catches one and scores a touchdown, he's going to break the slate. But I'm with you that the most likely outcome is that we get a 0 from Deshaun Watson. But I do think,
what are we saying on the screen, producer Mike? In pregame warmups for the Raven, the first team is okay. That is what we're thinking here. We're not seeing Deshaun Jackson in the starting lineup. Okay, cool. That's a good start.
All right, that's good to know.
We should also talk about last week, as you mentioned, Neil. Demarcus Robinson tied that tight end we're likely to talk a lot about in a minute with 6 receptions. The team lead, Devin Duvernay with 4 receptions in terms of target percentage. Demarcus Robinson led all Ravens receiving options with a 23.5% target share. Just a 1-week sample, but worth noting. Again, it's not that cheap salary wise. It's actually a little tough, but I will be going there. James Prochet is the one where I feel like that's pretty iffy to me.
You think so? I mean, he projects fairly well relative to his salary. Yeah, I mean, the field is getting there at 20%. Do you think that's too much, James Prochet?
Well, obviously, our tools actually see it as he should be in about a third of lineups. So high leverage score. But I'm still looking at a player who had 0 targets, and then 4 targets. I think we're just obviously playing the game where this is not a popular play. It's in a salary range that is a little weird, honestly, for this slate. And we did see his snap share spike from 15% in week 7 to 63%. And there's all these wide receivers down. So Prochet probably gets that 2/3 snap share, maybe even a 2/3 route rate. I see why he shows up in our tools for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, we saw Rashad Bateman went down last week, and it seems like Prochet kind of stepped in, and immediately he was the one who benefited the most in terms of snap count from Rashad Bateman going down. Is that how you see it as well? That he benefited directly from Rashad Bateman going down, and that could have been just a 1-week thing. Like that was in that game, he was the most prepared, and now they've had a week of practice since then to prepare somebody who'd be better suited. But it seems like that's what happened last week. So do you think he's going to get that same kind of workload as we saw after Bateman went down last week?
I think in terms of playing time, that is a fair assessment. But in terms of value to the passing offense, which again, we talked about this game environment not necessarily being pass heavy, I think really we're talking about Duvernay, Demarcus Robinson, and of course, the tight end we're about to talk to, Isaiah Likely, as the primary options. Prochet, obviously a speedster who can get things done in one play, is a possibility here, but he's just not my favorite personally.
Okay. Yeah, and that makes some sense. So I have a lot of Prochet currently, and I actually was just lowering his projection because I'm over the field by a significant amount, and I don't think I want to be with guys like Traquan Smith and Marquez Callaway not getting nearly as much ownership. I'd rather spread out a little bit to those guys. So I'm trying to get lower to closer to the field, but he does project very well. As you said, he looks good in our tools, some positive leverage. I don't think I'm going to be too far off the field on Prochet personally.
Yeah, and our tools over at Stokastic.com, pretty solid. You want to just trust those things.
Yeah, they're decent tools.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
So it's okay to be different, like I'm talking about, but it's okay to just trust the math sometimes.
That's right.
To the tight end position, Isaiah Likely. This is probably the man for Baltimore tonight. Mark Andrews, such an important part of this Baltimore offense. Usually we have a really solid dozen fantasy point projection for him over on DraftKings, a solid point per dollar, a positive leverage score. Talk me out of how much Isaiah Likely is too much is really what I'm at this point.
I mean, once again, we look at our tools. He has positive leverage, 8.9% projected ownership in the captain spot, 11.6% optimal. In the util spot, we have him at 33.4% projected ownership, 41% optimal. It kind of felt like he stepped right into that Mark Andrews role as soon as Mark Andrews went down last week. And I don't see any reason to think that he won't. He's a great offensive tight end. I think he's going to play the Mark Andrews role. Now, whether he is as efficient as Mark Andrews, certainly in question. Mark Andrews may be the best tight end in the game, but he looked good. He looks like a pretty solid replacement. So to expect him to be not that far off Mark Andrews in terms of expected fantasy points seems about right to me. Is that how you see it as well?
This is the guy. This is the guy for me. Obviously, he's going to be super popular. Again, where the salary is in a tough range, but you can absolutely get to him at 5,800. I think he's great. I think I've been calling him the rare tight end handcuff just because of the way that the tight end is utilized in this offense. And we saw it right away. 6 targets, even with Andrews playing for a little bit of the first half last week. I think he's a great play tonight. I don't think he's too expensive. You don't have to play him if you're just playing 5 to 20 lineups. I get why you're fading him because we're seeing a decently high ownership. Even at the captain spot, we're seeing like almost a 10% ownership for him today expected. Still kind of like it. Still kind of like it as that receiving one option for Lamar Jackson, most likely. It gets real thin right after that, though. Isaiah Likely, who has a 6 to 8 target upside range. Nick Boyle, Josh Oliver, 1 to 2 targets maximum. Yeah.
You think so? You think Josh Oliver maxes out at 1 to 2 targets?
Josh Oliver has had 8 targets in the last 5 games. So 1 to 2 feels pretty safe to me.
Yeah, that seems about. I mean, I feel like the range of outcomes might be a little bit wider, but yeah, he has not been. But he is also now he's the tight end 2 instead of the tight end 3, arguably. So maybe a little bit more opportunity. I'll take some shots on Josh Oliver. I think I prefer Josh Oliver to Nick Boyle from a fantasy standpoint. But he's getting 10% ownership. So that's I'm going to be under the field on Josh Oliver. I think I am with you that he's certainly not going to. I think Isaiah Likely is the guy there. But as you say, Josh Oliver might get a couple targets if they're in the red zone. Maybe those are valuable targets. But yeah, I'm going to be, if the field's at 10%, I'm going to be under the field there.
Let's see, red zone target percentage. Okay. Actually, 4 of his 8 targets have come in the red zone. Maybe they drop a play or 2 for him. I don't hate that if you're talking about trying to take down a large field tournament.
Yeah, which is, and we need to hear, we should do our caveat here. Everything that I say, all I'm playing is the largest field GPPs. So it's every decision I'm making is based around playing those large field GPPs, where if it pays off a lot larger than in a small field GPP. So the reason that I'm even thinking about playing a guy like Josh Oliver is because I'm trying to win a lot of money. I'm trying to make lineups that are not duplicated hundreds of times. And I think those are less likely to. So that's the reason I'm playing Josh Oliver, not because I'm like, oh, he's going to get, 8 targets this game.
Right. We're not saying Josh Oliver cash game lock. Chad knows this, but it's good. It's good to get that down and make sure we all remember that.
We get new people from time to time.
That's
so
right.
We got to tell them who we are.
We're happy to see them. He's the Showdown Shaman, by the way. You want to hear what he has to say. All right, we got to talk defenses and kickers. Why don't we just talk about the GOAT himself, Justin Tucker, man. He's going to be popular. He's really good at football. And if this game gets ugly or run heavy or just doesn't have a whole lot of total points, Justin Tucker is going to be very important to this Showdown slate.
Yeah, I kind of hate how good Justin Tucker looks, because when I hear a kicker is going to be probably 30+% owned, I'm like, gag. I don't want to play a kicker who's going to be 30+%. And then I look at our tools, 3.2% projected ownership in the captain spot, 6.3% optimal, 25% utility ownership, 30% optimal. He's positively leveraged in both of those spots. The tools are telling me, the projection is telling me we want to play some Justin Tucker at 4,200. The price is too low for his projection, for his range of outcomes. Yeah, Justin Tucker looks great.
Go, go, go. I don't know what else to say. The game could be a shootout, in which case more points are scored and the kicker still kicks extra points and we might have field goals more necessary. The game may be a sludge fest, as I like to call it, in which case kickers will be very, very necessary. There's a lot of ways this works out, and he's freaking awesome, man. So that's how we're going to play this one. Justin Tucker, not too expensive on FanDuel or DraftKings today. The defense, hey, Andy Dalton can throw interceptions with the best of them. We've seen it on these Showdown slates already. You have some interest in the Baltimore defense tonight as well?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the most important thing for me when I'm looking at defenses, is how turnover prone is the offense. And as you say, Andy Dalton has thrown plenty of interceptions so far this year. So I like the Ravens defense just fine here. They are 4,800, so the price tag is a little bit high, but I'm currently looking like I'm going to be a little bit above the field in terms of the tools. The Ravens defense, they look a little bit over-owned in the captain spot, 3.1% projected ownership, 1.9% optimal. So not as good in the captain spot. Very neutral in the util spot, 16.6% projected ownership, 16.2% optimal. So slight negative leverage there as well. But I'm right with the field on the Ravens defense. I think that it's as good a spot as any.
Ravens are 8th in Football Outsiders past DVOA. They have Marcus Peters active. Dalton could have a day, and the defense could still turn him over a couple times. I do like the Ravens defense as well. Not as much as I like Justin Tucker, but definitely on the table, especially if we're considering the fact that this game could have a pretty low end of the range of outcomes today.
Yeah.
That pretty much sums up the Baltimore Ravens. But here is what I want to talk about now. No house advantage, and the fact that their overlay is ridiculous tonight. I just refreshed it right now. On their 10K to first, 20K Monday Night Football Showdown contest, just $15 to enter. We are at 44% full. That is a huge amount of overlay. And in the $5 contest, it's 59% full. A little bit more full, actually, than I expected. Still, 2K to first, just an awesome place to play over a no house advantage. They just upped the deposit bonus they'll give you as well. You can get $50 free from them when up to a $50 first match deposit bonus when you sign up over there. They have some really awesome ways to play, and we have some awesome tools over at Stokastic.com that can help you out with this new format. It's the same projections, the same things that you use for DFS, but you're ranking them in terms of confidence. You're showing the lines there, and we have a tool, remember, on Stokastic.com that can help you take it down. You can also test your skills versus the house and 20x your entry if you hit all your picks by betting 5-player props, over-unders, or individual player matchups across all major sports leagues. Again, $50 first match deposit bonus when you click the link in the video description below. No house advantage, man. Thank you for sponsoring the show. They have an awesome platform. Get in there today. The New Orleans Saints, Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle. This battery of Dalton and Kamara have found a little bit of a groove, but what are you thinking tonight in terms of their salary? Are you playing Andy Dalton in any high capacity?
Yeah. So were we on the show together the last time when I decided to lower my ownership, my exposure to Andy Dalton in the captain spot specifically, and then he threw for 4 touchdowns and was the optimal captain, and I was kicking myself. Were you on that show with?
I think so. Right.
I mean, it wasn't your fault.
Arizona.
I'm not blaming you for this.
Yeah.
Not on camera, at least. I'll DM you later.
All right, that's fair. That's fair.
I'm going to be playing some Andy Dalton. As I've alluded to, sometimes in the way that I set up my tools, I get to more quarterbacks because I give boost to the pass catchers in lineups that have the quarterback. It naturally makes those lineups look better. I get to more of them. So then sometimes I have to go into the captain spot and say, all right, let's give a thumbs down here. I want them to correlate. I want more of those guys, but I also don't want to just get all of this quarterback in the captain spot because of that correlation. But I think that I'm probably just rolling with it tonight with Andy Dalton. I'm getting to about 20% Andy Dalton in the captain spot. I think that he's as solid a play as almost and not anybody, but just about anybody. I'm probably just going to let it ride. And then in the quarterback spot, in the flex spot, I'm getting to currently 37%. So just a little bit under the field. Andy Dalton's another one of those guys. I think we kind of know what he is. We look in the tools though. He's very neutral in the captain spot. 8.5% ownership, 8.5% optimal, 8.4% optimal as neutral as it gets. 42.9% projected ownership in the util spot, 49.5% optimal. So he looks actually better in the util spot, which is not how I'm doing it right now. I'm getting more in the captain spot, less in the util.
I think you're onto something. I know what the tools say here. And again, I'll caveat this. If you want to just trust the tools, not a bad idea. But I kind of look, quarterback on a 1-game slate argument, right,
yep,
Neil?
Yep, exactly.
This is
right.
Quarterback on a 1-game slate, and we've seen Andy Dalton, even when turnover prone, able to throw for multiple touchdowns. Not saying it's the most likely outcome, but we're saying it's a possibility here. And now you're talking about a quarterback, again, 1-game slate, who's going to be under 9% owned. I don't know. If he outscores Lamar Jackson, if you're right about that one thing, that can completely flip the slate. And it's not like you have to be completely out on a limb. Again, it's a quarterback on a 1-game slate.
Yep.
It's an interesting play for sure. And obviously when you include the flex play, he's still a coin flip chance of being somewhere in the optimal lineup.
Yeah. We're on the same page. He's a solid play. He's likely to put up a good amount of fantasy points, probably going to be in the top 4 or 5 in terms of overall score. It's just a matter of whether his salary allows for him to be in the optimal with the other guys who also project well and have high salaries. So yeah, Andy Dalton, great play if you can fit him in your lineup, and he correlates well. You don't want to play him at the probably anywhere in your lineup. I'm probably not playing Andy Dalton. Actually, no, I'm not playing Andy Dalton in any of my lineups without any pass catchers along with him in the lineup. He just doesn't have the rushing upside to score fantasy points without passing the ball. So he's probably, if he's scoring fantasy points enough to be in the optimal lineup, some pass catcher on the Saints is as well. And I'd prefer, if you're playing him in the captain spot, to have two Saints in the flex spots, but I won't in every single one, but in the majority of my Andy Dalton captain lineups, I'm going to have multiple Saints pass catchers in the flex.
That would be the most NFL in 2022 thing ever if naked Andy Dalton got there. A great breakdown, exactly how I'm seeing it as well, why you want to bring multiple pass catchers along with Dalton, and that's even more important compared to when pairing with Lamar Jackson for the clear difference in rushing upside. At the running back position, we've already talked plenty about Alvin Kamara. He's good. Pretty darn good at football. Looks decent in the tools, particularly good at the flex position on DraftKings. But talk to me about these other running back. Red Rider. Very, very nice. Producer Mike. Awesome, Stochastic behind the glass. Appreciate you, man. Talk to me about Dwayne Washington or Jordan Howard. Is it just Alvin Kamara or bust here? Like, we have projections for these players, but it is gross.
It is gross, and I'm going there. So these are the guys that I am taking stands on a little bit, just because. Okay, so they're 200. No Mark Ingram in this game. Mark Ingram was had a sizable role in the offense for the Saints. He had his opportunities. I think that, Dwayne Washington is probably the more likely of the two to get first crack at being the backup running back, but it wouldn't be that shocking to see Jordan Howard coming in. So I'm splitting it a little bit between Dwayne Washington and Jordan Howard. This is Jordan Howard's first game with the Saints, so we don't really know what to expect. Do we think that Jordan Howard is the better Mark Ingram impersonator here? Do you have an opinion on that between these two guys? Who is more likely to step into a Mark Ingram role?
I have no idea what Jordan Howard is about to look like this year. Come on. I mean, he was a plotter beforehand. It wasn't like he was getting there with any kind of efficiency. But that said, red zone opportunities are fickle on this team, and they don't have a whole lot of options outside of Kamara and Taysom Hill, of course. That would be an interesting play. I don't have a great read on this. But Jordan Howard, there's a reason they signed him. There's a reason they elevate him. And obviously, with Mark Ingram out, somebody is going to have to take RB2 spell snaps here from Alvin Kamara. They're really cheap. I get it. It's still really tough to suss this one out.
Yeah, I mean, same page. I don't know what to make of them. My assumption is that one of those two guys will have at least 5 or 6 carries tonight. So I'm going to be playing both of them with the hopes that those carries are in the red zone and one of them can fall into the end zone at very low expected ownership. So I'm kind of splitting my ownership there. I'm giving them the exact same projection. They are both 200 in salary, and I'm letting Fantasy Cruncher work it out for me which one of them I got more of.
Low ownership, low salary. When you're right, things go very, very well for you. Speaking of the right choices, how about listening to Matt Gajewski's college sports advice? First of all, just unbelievable heater he's on.
Yeah.
Just insane what he's doing in the college football streets. But Midnight Madness is here, man. College basketball around the corner. That means Matt Gajewski is offering his projections over at Stokastic.com, and boy, are they awesome. We are offering $1 for the first week with code CBB is back. That's all one word. CBB is back for $1 for the first week of college basketball projections. This man is in the weeds. This man is incredible at what he does. There's the sign on the screen. We got projected fantasy points, player usage data, and expert Discord chats available to you. This offer is only good for 1 week. Get into the action. You're going to like the way you learn about college basketball with that one. Awesome stuff over there.
Absolutely.
Now let's talk about.
Could I give one other shout out?
Yeah, absolutely.
Some shout outs to our. I was listening to Live Before Lock on Sunday, and I listened to my guy Savoca and Lindquist talking about Justin Fields, talking him up, and I was like, you know what? I wasn't planning on really playing much Justin Fields, but you guys got me onto. I still only got to like 4 or 5% Justin Fields, but appreciated you guys talking about him, getting me on there, because obviously he was a great play. Of course, the ownership came in well over what we expected, so was a better play at what we expected him to be. But still, shout out to you guys for getting me onto some Justin Fields.
Appreciate it, man. I'm glad I could help you out a little bit. I did not think he was going to break the single game rushing record for quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Get out of here with that. To the wide receiver and tight end position. I guess we should talk about these receivers first. It's Olave and everyone else. It sounds like you're kind of interested in Marquez Callaway and Traquan Smith, basically because, again, of what happens to your lineups if Olave fails. Is that sort of how you're playing it, that contrarian way?
Yeah, I mean it's largely just an ownership play. Neither of these guys expected to get a ton of ownership. So in my latest run, I mean Olave is the pretty clear wide receiver one here, as you say, and he is the one that I'm getting the most exposure. I'm actually above the field on Chris Olave currently on DraftKings, but I do like Callaway at 9%. I'm actually just above the field. I'm at 11% Marquez Callaway, and I'm a little bit above the field. I'm at 18% Traquan Smith. These guys they're salary relief, and they are not getting a ton of projected ownership. So I'm slightly above the field on those guys. Not taking a huge stand, but I am just getting above the field because they are the wide receivers 2 and 3 on this team. I'm slightly above the field on Rashid Shaheed as well. I thought we had him at higher ownership. He is the most expensive and the worst projected of the three, but at only 5% ownership, I'm at 7% Rashid Shaheed. I'm playing all these guys, just spreading it out slightly above the field on all of them, not taking any big stands. The only one that I think is an actual like this guy's I'm comfortable playing him is Chris Olave. The rest are just kind of dart throws.
Shahid is one where it's going to take a little bit more for me to believe it, but they keep drawing up plays for this, undrafted rookie, and he's had some splash plays.
Yep.
We saw that happen with some other players who fizzled out very quickly and didn't really get any other playing time. But that's also the way that we got introduced to Austin Eckler and Arian Foster and some players that have become superstars. I'm not saying that is in Shahid's true reasonable range of outcomes yet, but that's how it starts. That's how it starts.
Actually, here's another shout out to my coworker. It was you on that same Andy Dalton show, the same Andy Dalton Showdown. We didn't have a projection for Shaheed. I was not planning on playing any Rashid Shaheed, and you brought him up as a potential wide receiver. We talked about it a little bit, and I was like, oh yeah, I should play some of this guy. So it was you had that call out on our show a couple weeks ago on the Saints Showdown slate.
Thanks, man. I still think, like, obviously the way you're seeing it, Traquan and Marquez Callaway make more sense in a vacuum.
Yep.
But you never know. I certainly think Shaheed has more upside than Kevin White. Miss me with Kevin White. He's in our projections now, yeah?
He is in our project. We have him projected for fewer than 3 fantasy points. So if you want any Kevin White in your life, you're going to have to give him a boost to his projection. But yeah, I prefer Shaheed to Kevin White.
There you go. I'm looking at these value scores. They're pretty meh. Olave, honestly, is one we need to bring up because he has a pretty decent leverage score at captain and utility. He's obviously the main guy there. Top 5 in the NFL in air yards total. What do you think of him tonight?
I love him today. I mean, as I said, Olave is the one guy that I'm actually above the field. Although sometimes we see the studs actually get steamed up more than what we expect with the ownership. So I might not end up being above the field, but currently I'm at, I think, 44% Olave. So I think he's a great play. I'm going to be playing plenty of Olave. He is the one wide receiver, I would say, on either team that you can actually feel confident in playing.
Wow. We're thinking that half the field or half the lineups are going to have Chris Olave today.
Really?
Hey, look, it's not a bad play. He's a great player, stoked for his career, and obviously clear number one option. But does he really have a 50% chance of hitting? Yeah, maybe I'll eat my words. He's not too expensive. He's not my favorite either at 8,600. I do have some interest in him at the captain spot. I think that's kind of interesting. You play Dalton there in a flex spot where he has positive leverage as well. That's kind of how I'm seeing it.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, 50%. So I guess that includes the captain ownership as well. We've got him in 50%. Is that right?
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. So I don't actually know how much I have him at captain. My guess is I'm still probably slightly above the field, but that is an interesting way of looking at it. But it is a one game slate. So I guess we're playing him for comfort. He's a solid play. He's probably the best wide receiver option of the group. for whatever that's worth in a game
Yeah,
like this.
he is the best wide receiver specific option of
Yeah.
either team, I would say.
Yeah.
And now the tight end position, which has a person who's technically designated as a tight end, who is the weirdest usage profile on all of football, is really what we can say Taysom Hill has. He's also going to be on the field with Juwan Johnson, who has gotten some love in these previous live before locks. How are you seeing the tight end position here this week?
I mean, I'm seeing Juwan Johnson as being the actual tight end. So he's the one that you're playing as a tight end. If you want to play a real tight end, it's Juwan Johnson. I'm actually getting to a good amount of Juwan Johnson. Currently getting to I got up to 24%. That was I wasn't intending to get that high. I was at like 6%, so I gave him a slight boost. Got a little bit more than I intended. I'm okay with it though. To be honest, it's not like he's almost like the number 2. He's probably as comfortable as anybody outside of Olave among the pass catching primary options. Obviously not counting Alvin Kamara there.
Yeah.
So if I'm at 24% at 4,400, that seems fine to me. Adam Troutman is back, so maybe I should cut back a little bit on the Juwan Johnson if I have time to, because Adam Troutman could be a play as well. We're getting to 6% projected ownership. I'm at 6.7% on Adam Troutman. I think that he's a touchdown or bust kind of play. So yeah, I'm currently getting to a lot of Juwan Johnson. I probably wouldn't. I'd probably prefer to get a little bit closer to the field than 24%.
One thing I noticed last week with Juwan Johnson is he played on 90% of snaps. And as we mentioned, that was because Troutman wasn't there. He is back this week, but he only ran a route on 51% of the team's routes. So right. Johnson was used a lot, but also wasn't used on passing downs all that much. Ran only 16 routes. Taysom Hill, 43% snap share. He ends up running 10 routes, gets the highest target total he's had all season, too, by the way. They just design plays for this guy. If they come at the goal line, he ends up getting in the end zone multiple times, whether he passes it, runs for it, catches it. He could be a problem for your lineups. I'm going to have some shots at Taysom Hill at captain because the 40-point ceiling, we know it's there. It's just kind of that simple. We just don't know how many players that's actually true for on this slate. It's not the most likely thing, but I'll have some lineups that go there.
I will also have some Taysom Hill lineup. Yeah, it's like I've said it before. I think that he is the hardest player to project in all of football because we don't know what to like. Is he a running back? Is he a receiver? Is he a quarterback? He does everything. We never know exactly how much he's going to be a part of the game plan. It's hard not to want to play some Taysom Hill because more games than not, they do want to get him involved. So yeah, I'm with you on Taysom Hill. I actually, as I've started making my FanDuel lineups, and I just want to say DeSean Jackson, 3.7% on FanDuel at 6,000. I'm more interested there than I am on DraftKings because he's one of those guys. I've said it before. I'll say it again. On FanDuel, volume players don't have as big of an advantage as they do. Or on FanDuel, not as big of an advantage to the guys who get targeted repeatedly. It just takes one touchdown because you don't have the full PPR bonus. You don't get bonuses for yardage and that kind of thing. So DeSean Jackson under 4% on FanDuel, more interest there than on DraftKings.
That's a good point. Touchdowns, again, the hardest thing to predict in football, become even more valuable when you have the lack of bonuses and the half PPR scoring on FanDuel. Yeah. Look, the tools don't say that Taysom Hill is a good play today. I see in chat that people are like, easiest fade of the whole slate. And I think that's very rational. I just think there's a ceiling there that's worth chasing if you got a couple lineups to spare for it. To the defenses and the kickers, not going to look nearly as good as the Baltimore side, but I have some interest here. Talk to me about the Saints defense, which is missing Marshawn Lattimore and is only so-so in Football Outsiders metrics right now. 12th against the run, 11th against the pass.
Yeah, so again, the thing that we care the most about is turnovers. Lamar Jackson has thrown 6 interceptions so far this year. I do like that it's a home game too for the Saints. I'll factor that in a little bit. I think they're more likely to get a little bit hyped and cause some troubles for the Ravens offense. So I like the Saints defense just fine here. I currently on DraftKings have 15% Saints defense. So I'm a little bit under the field where they're playing 18%. That's about, I'm not taking a big stand here. And again, I've said it before, I'll say it again on these showdown slates. I love playing a few lineups with the quarterback against the opposing defense as a way to get unique. So I'll be doing that once again as well.
That with Lamar on the other side. It's scary. It's scary. It sounds scary, but then when you see how many times it actually ends up in the optimal lineup or ends up in the winning lineup, you're like, oh, well, fine. That's like, it's allowed. It's allowed. And that's one thing that you're always bringing up, is that just because you think a ceiling performance is possible from one quarterback does not mean that opposing defense can't also find its way to sacks and turnovers in that same game environment.
Yep.
Kicker's fine as well. Kicker on a 1-game slate, but they're not Justin Tucker. That's pretty much how it goes. How much Will Lutz do you have today?
Less than Justin Tucker. Let's see. I'm getting to on draft 10% on DraftKings in the flex spot. I don't think I have any in the captain, or I have very little in the captain as well. So under the field on Will Lutz, and it looks like I'm getting to right about the field on Justin Tucker right now.
Will Lutz positive captain leverage score. Can I interest you in that?
Ooh, that actually does. That does interest me. You should maybe think about playing some Will Lutz. I mean, he's cheap, so he can allow you to make some good lineups with him in it. So yeah, for sure, that interests me a little bit.
We're still talking about very, very unlikely outcomes here. We're talking about 1% outcomes here at the most. Again, it's what happens when you're right, not the most likely thing. We're trying to suss that out every single time. Any final thoughts about the Saints in general? Like, we spent all this time talking about these auxiliary weapons. This could still just be the Alvin Kamara show, no?
It could very easily just be the Alvin Kamara show. Yeah, I am with you on that. They're interesting options. As I've said, I think the receiving options are going a little bit low on the Marquez Callaway and the Traquan Smith are going a little bit lower owned than I think that they should. So I'm, playing more than the field on those guys, but certainly it could just be Alvin Kamara. Taysom Hill, I think, is likely to have some involvement here, but outside of them, there's nobody you really feel all that confident in.
Yeah, I kind of feeling the same way. Hey guys, don't forget, we were talking about NHA earlier. First of all, just check the overlay, 51% full in the main contest today. We have free projections, and we have a lineup uploader tool to help you on Stokastic.com. A multi-enter tool as well. We can take advantage of that overlay. Really, really simple. As we see 2 minutes to lock, tons and tons of overlay. Yeah, definitely really important to mention. Hey, we have a final super chat with 2 minutes to go. My filler Archeo, always in here, man. Great to see you, and thank you so much for the super chat. Thanks to everyone hanging out today. Who was the guy that Lamar was yelling at last game because he got in his way and held a defender to reverse a touchdown? I need to know to fade him. I actually don't know the play you're talking about.
I'm trying to remember what this play was while also trying to upload lineups. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you.
Let's just hope it's Gus Edwards, and that way that person's not on the field today.
We don't have to worry about
inactive.
It. Yeah.
That's a tough one, my filler arc. We do appreciate each and every super chat, and we appreciate all of you hanging out in here. 1 minute till lock, Neil. Any final thoughts for the people?
Just got my lineups in, so feeling good. No, I feel like we've covered everything fairly well. We covered the players that are the most likely, and that was not an intended pun. Do not take that as a pun. But yes, Isaiah Likely, one of those players that we like. I tweeted before the show that I was not going to make any puns. I wasn't trying to make a pun there, so I want to be clear. That was not a pun. Okay. Isaiah Likely looks good. Alvin Kamara looks good. I like some Taysom Hill. I know not everybody does. Obviously Chris Olave looks good. Lamar Jackson. What else can we really say there? I think we talked about all the nuggets we wanted to.
It's not a pun. Likely story there. Follow him at PlayerQ DFS. He's the Showdown Shaman, Neil Orfield. I love hanging out with him on these live before lock shows. My name is Matt Savoca at Draftaholic. Hit that like button on the way out too. Helps out the YouTube algorithm understand what we're all about here. And let's go win some money. We are at lock. Enjoy the Ravens versus the New Orleans Saints, and keep it right here on the Stokastic DFS channel tomorrow. We got the NFL strategy show, PGA strategy shows, and NHL strategy and live before lock. No NBA tomorrow. Make sure you vote if you got an election tomorrow. Enjoy the game, guys. Have a good one.